The Full Exposure Podcast is made possible by Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn in appreciation for the contributions that artists and creative minds provide to our community. Arts and culture are essential to a rich and rewarding life, strengthening our overall well-being and our appreciation of all that we see, hear, and experience. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Full Exposure with me, your host, Brian Kelly. And this is the first episode of the new decade of 2020. It's a new year. I could not be more excited about what's going to happen with the podcast over the next year. And if you're just joining us, if this is the first podcast of ours that you've listened to, I just want to welcome you and explain the premise really quick of this podcast. I am a photographer. I'm a video director also. But the premise of the podcast is typically I invite a guest to my studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We sit down. The first thing we do right away when the guest arrives at the studio is we shoot a portrait. And I create a portrait of that guest. And then we sit down and have a conversation about whatever we want. Sometimes these are people I've never met before. Sometimes these are old friends or artists or people I've known through my business or whatever it may be. Sometimes I have a connection with them. Sometimes I don't. And occasionally we take the podcast out on location. We go to our guests and we do a photo shoot at a place that's significant to that person. And then we sit down and have a conversation in that location. And last fall, in October, we went to California. And we did 5 different episodes. And this is the 4th episode, I believe, that we're releasing from that Los Angeles-based trip. I like the premise because many times in my professional life as a photographer, I have used conversation during a portrait session to get people to relax, get their mind off all the equipment and gear and strobes and crew standing around. And invariably, a great conversation would get started during a photo shoot. And then when the photo shoot ended, so did that conversation. So this whole podcast is built around the idea that I get to still have that great portrait session with somebody, but then we get to extend our conversation into a podcast format. So that's the premise of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been listening to us a lot in 2019, thank you. Thank you because we've had some amazing growth in 2019, and it's because of people who are sharing us on Facebook or you've seen our video clips of excerpts of our conversations, and you've somehow spread the word about our podcast. And for you guys out there who listen to us fairly frequently, I appreciate you. So thank you very much. So just before we hop into this episode with Carter Oosterhouse, I just wanted to tell you about December. I had intended to get this episode with Carter out in mid-December, and that never happened, and it's for good reason. I was actually very busy in mid-December. I went to Connecticut and shot a project there, photo shoot for a few days, and then immediately left Connecticut to go to Scottsdale, Arizona to direct a video project for an entire week in Scottsdale. And it was a blast, but it sort of disrupted what I had anticipated for the podcast schedule. So I got back from Arizona and got right into family arriving from around the country and staying with us for the holidays. And I just unplugged everything, which I hope you guys did too. I thought about trying to still muscle this podcast out, and I thought, nope, I'm going to take some time with the family, enjoy the holidays and the new year. So I'm really fired up. I'm rested, and I am excited, as I said, about 2020. And I could not be more excited that the first episode of 2020 is with my friend Carter Oosterhouse. So let me properly introduce my friend Carter. Carter Oosterhouse is a native of Traverse City, Michigan. Carter first came to fame as a carpenter on HGTV's Trading Spaces during the explosion of many popular DIY, do-it-yourself home renovation shows. Carter has parlayed his television success into even more television shows, some of which he now owns and produces. He's also authored books, and he builds playgrounds across the country with his nonprofit organization called Carter's Kids. He's also invested heavily back into his hometown of Traverse City with the launch of the amazing Bonobo Winery on beautiful Mission Point in Traverse City just a few years ago. I first met Carter 6 years ago when I was asked to create portraits of him for an advertising campaign. We'd stayed in touch off and on since then, and when I asked him to be a guest on the podcast while I was out in Los Angeles, he mentioned that we could do a shoot at his home in Malibu. Let's just say we jumped at the chance. Carter's home with ocean views from atop a canyon ridge is truly a magical place to shoot some portraits and have a conversation. Carter and his wife, actress Amy Smart, keep deep ties back in Michigan, where they keep a home in Traverse City. Together they founded Smart House Collections, a company that is dedicated to more eco-friendly bedding products. And Carter he's just been so nice to me over the years and very inviting. I think it's part of our Michigan tie. We talk a lot about being from Michigan on a podcast. And I really, really appreciate him as someone I admire as a business person, someone who's always giving back to the various communities that he lives in. He's very involved both in Los Angeles, Malibu, and also in Traverse City and across the country building playgrounds. And he's just a great guy. I would like to thank again Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn for making these on-location episodes possible. All 5 of these from California were made possible by Metro Health, and they bring you conversations that take place outside of my studio, and we are so appreciative of their partnership with us. We are excited about 2020 and continuing our partnership with them, and so thank you, Metro Health. So without further ado, let's launch into and explore the bigger picture with my friend, entrepreneur, TV personality, winery owner, playground builder, father, husband, and overall great guy, Carter Oosterhouse. So what about Dan Tanis? So we were just, let me set this up because we were talking about Hollywood legendary bars. And Mark and I went to Dan Tanis last night.
Yes, the best. It's my favorite restaurant. And the one thing, we moved outside of LA, and that's the really one thing that I do miss is Dan Tanis because it's got so much history to it. It's a tiny little spot. And it's just like the waiters come out, you know, they're not checking every glass that they pour of wine for you. It's just got that history where they see your glass is, you know, half empty. They'll come over and put more wine in it. They don't even ask questions, and then they barely, you know, they don't charge you or they do charge you. It's like,
right.
So it's a thing. And so the maitre d' at Dan Tanis, his name was Craig, and he was the guy who everybody had to know to get into Dan Tanis, like back in the 90s. And then Craig did so well at Dan Tanis that he ended up starting his own restaurant right down the road called Craig's. And so it's amazing to see because the maitre d' now at Dan Tanis and the maitre d' at Craig's, Peter, you know, they're like the security to get into these, you know, unlock the key to get into these places. Oh, I know.
We went in and it was just before, it was probably like 5:15, 5:30 when we got there, just before a lot of people started coming. And there was only one seat at the bar, and the tables were, it was only maybe half full. So I talked to this guy, the maitre d' there, the host, and I said, is there any way we can just like grab a spot at the bar?
Yeah.
He goes, why don't you just go talk to the bartender? I don't deal with the bar. But he was saying it in a really funny way.
Yeah.
He was just like, I just loved how he was like, that ain't my problem.
Yeah, totally. So what's hilarious is Amy, my wife, used to go to acting class with that maitre d' at Dan Tanis now.
No way.
And so when we were on like our 4th date or whatever, she took me to Dan Tanis, and I was like, oh, it's going to be hard to get in.
Right.
Sure enough. My wife's cool like that. She's like old school Hollywood where people just know who she is, or she's got like that reputation of like, she's been here for a while doing the thing, and she's not all in the hustle and bustle of Hollywood, but yet she still can either know somebody because she's been around the business for so long, like the maitre d' who she was in acting class with 25 years ago, or what the coolest thing she ever did on our second date, she took me to a place called Casa Vega, and it was an hour wait, and she went up and greased the maitre d', gave him a 20 spot. And I was like, "Who are you? You just got so much cooler." Coming in. Yeah, totally.
Especially like when you're a guy from Michigan, and you're coming out here, you got no cred, and then you're dating a woman who's making tables open in 2 minutes.
Yeah, and by the way, guys from Michigan wouldn't do that. Like we just kind of are like, "Okay, we'll take our table in 2 hours. Okay, we'll take our table in 2 hours. No problem. We'll just wait right here."
And if it ends up 3 or 4, don't worry about it.
Yeah, hey, and then after like 2 hours, like, hey, really thank you for letting me in. Appreciate it. This place, we don't do that.
We're dopey.
Yeah, totally.
Just don't push people around enough. Make stuff happen.
I know.
Yeah.
But you just kind of like, there's really cool spots around here in Malibu, which is great. But there's also some very big touristy spots too. And on the weekends up here, it gets really crowded and so you tend to either stay at your home or, don't really go. Because it's only the PCH. That's what one thing people forget about Malibu. Yeah. It's literally the PCH and not much more. So
and neighborhoods. There's neighborhoods and the PCH.
Yeah, so it's not like there's a real
canyons.
Yeah, there's kind of a downtown Cross Creek, but not much. And so you got the beach, which is great, but you still have to navigate PCH. And
well, dude, thank you so much for having us up here.
Oh, my gosh. I'm so glad that you were able to come. I'm sorry about these fires that are existing right now up here in
as
Southern
we
California.
timestamp this, I don't know, is it the 11th or 12th of October? And there's some fires a couple miles away, but it's kind of a little bit smoky right now. We're lucky that the breeze is coming off the ocean, so it's pushed it back a bit.
So when we get these Santa Anas in California, in Southern California, it's not something that is normal. And when you get the Santa Anas, all these winds come from the east. They fly over the desert, and they basically are the opposite of what you get day to day. Mm-hmm. And that's when everybody kind of worries because it's like the dry season right now, and the Santa Anas are pushing things in a different direction. So if they're fast. And there's a lot of heat behind them. And so if something sparks, if a fire starts, everybody hears about these California wildfires. But that's because a lot has to do with the Santa Anas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and once it's going, it's ripping through stuff.
Right.
Like last year was really scary. We were talking about that earlier, and it got really close to around here, too. There's that one famous shot from the PCH at the Santa Monica where it just looked like...
Yeah, that was right down the road here.
Yeah.
Yep. And when everybody had to evacuate, so we had to evacuate for the fires last year. And fortunately, the evacuation, though it was still an evacuation, was not like your typical evacuation where you're like, run, get out of here, because there was not a fire right next door. Now, it wasn't far, but it still did not have that effect on us, though all of our phones went off and said we had to get out as quickly as we could. So we had that moment of, total freak out. Yeah. And my wife and I sat there, so quick, just grab stuff, let's go. And then we realized, okay, the fire's not that close to us. Right. So what should we take? I don't know. No, don't put that in the car. Let's take something else. So, we were here roughly for like a good 2 hours before we actually had to leave. But the PCH, they had 3 lanes going in one direction. Yeah. And the other lane was for coming back, which they wouldn't really, that was only for service vehicles. And then what the crazy thing is also the thing people forget about is up here in Malibu, it is where, celebrities want to get away and all that jazz and some really nice homes. But it's also a lot of old people who have been here for years.
Yeah, and if you're in like up near Topanga or wherever, there's these old ranches in the canyons, and there's just normal people. Like actually, they have livestock. And they have,
there's a farm right below our house right here, and so there's a farm right here. She has a ton of horses and cows and stuff, and people forget about that. Yeah. They're just families who, they're not in the Hollywood industry or whatever. They're just, they have their livestock or their farm. And so the point of that was that the weird thing when we did have to evacuate, we were driving down the PCH, bumper to bumper traffic, and you would see on the beach these makeshift pens for all the farm animals.
Oh,
Because
man.
if you think about it, what do you do with those farm animals when a fire exists? You kind of just take them down to the beach, and that's the only place. That was the most. That was the moment when I thought to myself, okay, this is getting weird
and surreal.
Yeah.
You know, when you're seeing live, you know, whatever, horses and stuff on the
Yeah.
beach penned up, or a
Right.
dog, or, you know, or whatever it is, chickens.
Well, then it is Malibu, so there were giraffes and I mean, like, you know, things you shouldn't be seeing
My
in Malibu.
tiger. Where's my tiger?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, there was, and you're like, wait, who has that?
What a surreal
Yeah,
thing.
that was kind of strange.
Do you and Amy have different perspectives on that? Because she's so LA and is probably doesn't really think some things are strange that you think are strange.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, Amy did grow up in Topanga, so that's strange to begin
Country
with.
girl more.
Yeah, well, hippie girl.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's really, you know, where that world still exists up there, which is really cool. And but yes, we do have things that are completely different. And, you know, look, we also have a ton of similarities as well. But, you know, being from Michigan and the Midwest, you do have a difference in appreciation or just you know.
That doesn't happen everywhere or anywhere
absolutely.
else. But then, and you guys spend still a lot of time up in Traverse City, but does she have those kind of odd moments up there where it's like, that seemed like the most Michigan thing I ever saw?
Absolutely. Because in Michigan, we have like a lot of, you know, our language can be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Obviously, our accents and how we stress various, you know, letters and that's just so, when you spend a lot of time probably just anywhere away from where you're from, I think that exists with a lot of people. But Michigan definitely.
Well, it hones your ear, you forget about it, and then you come back and you're like, okay, I heard it. Because you don't hear it any other time.
But it's also like the, you know, sort of the mentality in different areas, you know, like you think of, like the stereotypical thing is like New Yorkers, you know, they just put their heads down, they move forward, right? Californians, they're kind of like lazy and laid back, you know, and it's like, and in Michigan, I think we have that, whatever that is that exists, that when you go back there, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
What do you think that is? Because I think, well, I'm from Grand Rapids, you're from Traverse City, but when you say, if I say to anyone, where are you from? And you say Grand Rapids, Michigan. It just sounds so provincial and small, and it is the second largest city in the state. Yeah. But it's like, I think for coastal people, it just does not register. You might as well say like Des Moines, Iowa, or you know, somewhere in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the thing is with Michigan, we just kind of everywhere get a bad rap, you know, and you kind of have to really. Look, I'm the biggest preacher of Michigan, and I travel all the time, and I'm always speaking about how great it is, how many different amazing parts of Michigan there are, and I feel like I'm such an ambassador to the state because I love it so much.
Yeah.
And even today, this morning, I was having a conversation, and this lady she's kind of a little funny, and she's an older lady, and she's like, "Why don't you go back?" You know, and how she gave me that kind of like little,
you like it so much?
Yeah, why don't you go back?
Like,
and I was
easy,
like,
easy,
slow your roll.
Easy.
But I really do love it, and you have to kind of explain to a lot of people because they think Michigan's a flyover state. Yeah, you know, and it doesn't exist.
But it really, truly is. I think, especially up north. I had to shoot this was only a few weeks ago, but. I sort of took it for granted, but then when I really thought about it, how rare this assignment was, I shot something for the Wall Street Journal, and it was like, will you go to Mackinac Island for 3 days? We're doing a story about new construction on the island and how everything's still brought in on horse carts and you know, freight ferries and the codes and all this other stuff that they have to follow. And I just got to stay in Mackinac Island for 3 days. Right. And you sort of... It's a place I've gone my whole life, at least, you know, every couple of years. And then you kind of look around through the lens of like, okay, people are going to see this from all over the country or world, even with the Wall Street Journal. And so it's fun when you can take that perspective and see some things with some fresh eyes. Yeah. But certainly
because you know other people are going to be looking at it, and you kind of... that forces you to look at it through a different lens, which is also, by the way, that's a great thing because you get to appreciate it more. Yeah. Right? It's like not taking everything we have around us in life for granted.
Yeah. And just to be in the moment and present and go, okay, I'm going to pull this in for a second. Right. And But certainly Traverse City, where you're from, and where your business and your other home, because you guys kind of split time. I mean, you're mostly out here, but you spend the best months in Michigan.
Pretty much. I bought a house back there in 2006, and really knew that I wanted to stay back or get back there as much as I could possibly get back there, and it seemed like obviously the summers and then I just started, figuring it out. And that, a lot of my work is on the road anyway, so I can kind of live anywhere, but I still have to be in LA just because that is where I get the jobs.
Well, and we'll talk about it later, but you've merged into just not being on camera. You're owning and producing and pitching shows, and that's more of a business.
Right.
Got to be around and
totally
do meetings.
Yeah, right.
Just don't go to Moon Shadow and do too much in.
Right.
No, I had a quick question about. I had a flashing thought about talking about Michigan. Was just that what were some of Amy when you first brought her back to Traverse City in that area in Old Mission and like just the grandeur of the bay?
Right. Well, I thought you knew this, but like Amy grew up coming to Traverse City.
No,
I thought you knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I think
and
now
so
you may have told me.
When I met her out here in LA, she said, "Wait, you're from Traverse City?" And I said, "Yeah," because we were in this nonprofit together.
Got it.
Working on the board. And she goes, "You're from Traverse City?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, not my Traverse City." That's what she said to me. And I said, "Slow your roll. Wait, what do you mean your Traverse City? You cannot claim ownership over that.
Yeah.
I grew up there." And she said, "Well, I grew up going there in the summertime with my family." And I said, and again, it was in Omena, but still right next to Traverse City. And shockingly enough, she has friends that are my friends.
What a small world.
And that we never put the two and two together.
Yeah, so my question, because I didn't know this story, and I apologize, but I thought, like dropping Amy into Traverse City was like this, you could make almost a movie about it.
Right.
I was more thinking about the terrain of, just the natural beauty in our blue water is like an ocean. It looks, so great in the beaches, but turns out she's a part-time Michigander.
Yeah, well, her parents still live there, the full time.
No way.
So they did the reverse. They literally started in LA and then moved to Traverse City, which is who does that?
Yeah.
They live in this tiny little town that is obviously it's Traverse City. It's colder than cold in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And they, have such a big life there, which is awesome to see because they're so social. They do a bunch of stuff and they figured it out. So good for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to, for the audience, I just want to say you and we've met, 5-6 years ago. We were doing a shoot, we worked a couple of years, 2 or 3 years together on campaigns for a company. And so I was doing a lot of portraits of you for that stuff, and it was a blast. And we always just kind of stayed in touch. And I've come up to Bonobo, your winery in Old Mission, just to like chat. And I had some business questions about some video production stuff and how to pitch a show. And me and Dave, my buddy Dave Dyer, went out. He's been on the podcast too. My
great.
Comedian buddy. But to just pitch it. But you've always been so kind and warm and just this a friend, and you don't always make that connection on a professional shoot.
Sure.
And you were even in one of our Christmas cards one year because we did my family came.
That was great.
My family came
awesome.
in. My 3 daughters and my wife came in and happened to be right at the end of the shoot. And then our prop stylist had all these weird props.
That was
and
so
we were
much fun.
We were just goofing around, and then we made it our Christmas card,
which is perfect, as you should.
Just random.
I mean, the profession you're in, you should do that all the time. I would think.
Get a random celebrity to come into our. It was just so random, but it just worked out and it was funny, But anyway, I've enjoyed that. And now with this podcast, just being able to reconnect, I never thought I'd be in Malibu with you. I thought maybe it's so much easier to do it in Traverse City. But
well, time out. I never thought I'd be in Malibu. Okay, so isn't that funny how that works? Amy and myself were just always like, wait, what? How did we end up here?
Yeah.
Because Malibu is the thing that Amy and I were both like, I don't really know if we're Malibu people. That's a little too pretentious. You think of Malibu, you think of it's like the most Hollywood community outside of maybe in the hills or something, Yeah, I mean it's like the Hollywood Hills, and then you think of Malibu. That's where whatever. That's where like Cindy Crawford hangs out. Whatever.
Right.
George Clooney, and they do.
Yeah,
which is crazy, and you see them too, which is the craziest thing because then you're just like, wait, what?
Well, it is a small town, but they try to act like normal people and do normal things, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a small town, but you also realize, like I said before, like there's the existence of my neighbor up the hill. She's been there since '61. The guy down the hill has a farm, and he's been there. He was born and raised, and his parents passed away, and he's now raising his family there. So not everybody's an actor, but it's a fun place to live.
Well, what is it? It has to be surreal because I thought if I try to project myself in your situation and you're a kid from Traverse City and you have an interest in carpentry and just being handy and all this stuff, and then you end up doing some modeling and some other stuff, and then you have the life that you have now and your family, beautiful family that you have, and your daughter Flora is so cute. And then to be on this hilltop overlooking the Pacific Ocean and these other incredible, beautiful homes and architecture, I don't even know how you wrap your head around it sometimes.
So we got lucky, and you always hear about like timing is everything. Okay, so like just going back, when I met Amy, if I would have met her years before, I was in a long-term, she was in a long-term relationship, that never would have worked out. If we would have met in Traverse City, I probably would have been an idiot. And that wouldn't have worked out, But when we met at the right time. We were both out of our relationships, just newly out of our relationship. Yeah. So that was timing. This house, she never wanted to move out of our old house, and I was like, "No, come on."
Where was that?
That was up in Coldwater Canyon, up in the essentially like the Hollywood Hills, but that's a very big, broad paintbrush of like that's a very big area, but. And so I was always like, there's something else. And we weren't looking in Malibu. We were looking at Topanga. And so it is kind of a funny story how we were able to get this house. Okay, so just to paint the picture a little bit, because people at home, like if you can't see this, right? It's a podcast. We got the luckiest lottery ticket ever. And the way we did that was we weren't looking in this area. I expanded Trulia or whatever those apps are a little bit more into Malibu after like 6 months of looking, and I said, well, let's just see what's up there. And then at that point, this house went on the market. It was in escrow for twice, and the people didn't know what to do with it. And they couldn't build any extra square footage because the city had a moratorium on this particular street where there's 25 homes on the street. And they said nobody can build any extra square footage for 2 years until we put this bigger mainline water pipe in. So that's why it fell out of escrow. That's why no developers, because when we got into this house, it was a dump. Yeah. It was so nasty.
But you were rolling up your sleeves on that, I'm sure.
100%. Yeah, I was like, I could do this. Yeah. I don't need to add any extra square footage. I'll strip the whole thing down interior, put a new roof on it, exterior, but they just wouldn't let you. So somebody wanted to come here and we were on about 3 acres, and so somebody wanted to come here and just build a 16,000 square foot home. They weren't able to at that time. So that's why it fell out of escrow twice. So again, it was timing. So the day it went back on the market, I came to see it, and I put an offer in right there. I didn't have the money to do it. I was just like, I'll buy this house. And they're like, really? Can you afford it? I was like, I'll figure it out, man. I'll just figure it out. And so I was, just kind of shuffling paperwork around until I could figure out how to make it happen, and then we got it.
And how long ago was that when you...
So it's about almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, and it had to be a hard time just because the winery was newer then. Mm-hmm. And you guys keep investing in your baby.
Our child was born the day before we closed on this house.
No way.
Yeah, so it was like
all the stressors.
All the stressors.
Baby.
Yeah.
Winery going,
Yeah,
just
totally.
A work career.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, but I think we found our, like, we would like to say that this is our place that we'll be, we'll have for our entire lives, but, you never know in life, right? So we don't know, but we're very happy where we're at. But again, I think that's just a life lesson. It is timing. If you think you need something now and you don't get it, maybe it wasn't the right time to get it. And maybe if you did get something, maybe it wasn't the right time to get that either. So you just never know. And
I think there's something that I'll take a little left turn here is that you have some Buddhist imagery and things around. Is that something that you practice?
So I grew up going to a Catholic school in Traverse City. Mom was a superintendent. Just crazy. And and which was, by the way, it was awful. But but the school was great. I love the school. But Amy and I, we say we're more spiritual.
Yeah.
We believe in a higher power, but may just not be, following the rules and constraints of, the traditional.
Well, yesterday I had a guest was Rob Bell on the podcast, and I don't know if you know him, but he's a pastor and was on Oprah and all this other stuff. But he's evolved away from this, this more of a traditional evangelical bent to all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And it's all about a journey being, a lot of the same journeys end up at the same destination.
Right.
It's about the search.
I totally believe that. Yeah. Absolutely, I believe that. I mean, I've had, my priests growing up in school were some of the best. Look, I mean, a lot of priests today get bad raps, right? But we had some of the best,
deservedly so.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but I had some of the best with a meaning priest who would say would help me to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And I also think, moving out of, which was Traverse City, which is, pretty conservative space and Michigan in general. But I think that was also, helpful to sort of open my mind to what was happening in other cultures or other existence or other cities.
And I think if you need to travel as much as you do, you just see, because you encounter maybe that those areas have their particular way or more types of a particular type of person or religious, predominantly religious one way. But there's a lot of ways to roll a rock up a hill, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think the more that we're siloed in our thinking and don't have enough collisions with people, the more fearful we are of almost everything,
Yeah, because you do see that a lot in, obviously, religion, where a lot of people will put up the barriers to say, okay, well, my family is going to exist in this, barrier.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to live, and these are the people we're going to hang out with, and these are the people we're going to talk to, and the kids are going to grow up like this. And look, I mean, it's fine, and who knows, I'm not the person to say that that's wrong, but sometimes it doesn't breed for more open conversation.
No, it's just that's where a lot of the problems we're having as a country, I think, too, is just there's just not enough listening. Right. People just assume who you are as something that they don't want to accept.
Right.
On any level. Yeah. Doesn't matter. It could be a million different ways to say, you shouldn't, I don't agree with your behavior or your beliefs or your economics or your politics or whatever, but it just seems now to just be.
I think it's a very good point. Listening is a very valuable asset to have. It's something that we don't have enough of, especially now in this country. And man, but when people do, it opens things up. Did you see the thing with George Bush and Ellen DeGeneres sitting together at the football game? I mean, the optics of that are just it opens conversation up, and it was, for whatever reason, I know some people didn't like it and some people thought it was great and whatever, but I thought it was cool. I just thought it was wow, the fact that those two can sit there, who knew?
No, I know. And then also the way she talked about it, because she was, there was a lot of bombs being thrown about it and things, but it really is that basic. If you could just roll it back like she did, and I'm not saying that there's it's a complicated thing to talk about, this president and the way that war started and all this other stuff that we don't. It's history now, but still. But she just rolled Ellen. What I liked the most about Ellen, and whether people agreed with her statement or not, she just rolled it back to being nice, be kind. And that's the only thing I've ever told my kids.
Right.
We have little pieces of artwork in our house that are by this folk artist, Reb Roberts from Grand Rapids. And it's be kind. Yeah. And it shows a cow with a bird riding on its back. Be nice.
Yeah. And that's what you want.
So simple.
So simple. Simple.
Anyway. Well, I want to talk to you about just the arc of your more recently, post HGTV, because you've really not put all your stock and energy into trying to be on camera and have this. So this entrepreneurial mindset that follows your media career and things that you're developing, but also that spills into this winery and aggressive, that the where you guys have come in a short period of time is pretty remarkable at the winery. But where is this entrepreneurial kind of drive that you had outside of just going, oh, I'm going to be a TV personality?
Right.
Where did that shift, or has it always been part of you?
Boredom. Yeah. It's just like, not boredom. I should say that because a lot of my colleagues who are designers, they're so, they're anal about so much detail, and I'm just like, gosh, you're so good. But I'm off to something else. And look, I love doing what I do and working on TV, but I'm fortunate enough to still work on TV, which is crazy because I've been doing it now for 17 years. And that's a long time, especially for a guy who's, again, just was a builder in Michigan, yeah. And with that, I kind of knew I wanted to get into other things, and that helped afford, my sort of my wants and desires. And at the time, I was young and dumb enough to think that I could start a winery, which I don't know that I would do that today because I'd be like, that's a big stressor. Though I do have 2 other projects that are pretty big that I'm just that are in the works. But I got into in the wine world because I knew Traverse City, Michigan, which again sounds crazy for the winos that are listening, but I knew that ceiling, nobody knew where that stops. Yeah. And when I would talk to investors out here in Southern California, they would say, why you want to get into wine, waste all your money, which is usually what happens. Plus it's so expensive in Central Coast or Northern California. Yeah. And I said Michigan, and they're like, wait, what? That they were just like, that's the worst idea ever. But I said, look, you can get in, and it's a great fruit bearing region, still the largest exporter of cherries in the U.S., and a lot of people are switching cherries to vineyards, and I saw some of my friends doing it, and I felt like, okay, if they can figure it out, I can figure it out. It's in businesses, I think it's just connecting the dots, right? Yeah. So if you can steer the ship and connect the dots of people to help you along the way, that's how I've always felt like with all my businesses are people that I know. When I started my production company, I felt like I'm not the smartest person to edit, right? But I know that I can, and I know that this guy over here is probably much better than me, so maybe I should get this guy over here to help me out, and maybe he wants to figure out a deal. So I just felt like, I'm not trying to make the most amount of money out of everybody in the room. I'm just trying to do stuff that's fun with everybody in the room.
Right, and be successful along the way, obviously, to be sustainable. Talk about early on with the winery, because I shot a story for a magazine up in that region, and it was all about the Leelanau Peninsula and Old Mission Peninsula and Mobby and all those people. And this was probably 12 years ago. It was a long time ago. Yeah. And it was, Madonna's dad, Ciccone. Yeah. He was, there was a meeting of all these vintners and winemakers, and they were all talking about how collaborative they were about that region, that they wanted everyone to make good wine. Yeah. It wasn't, and I'm wondering if it's still like that. It's not like that anymore. It's a little more cutthroat. Oh, man. No more Michigan nice, huh?
No, that's another thing. I was like, when I got into it, look, there's a lot of great wineries up there making fantastic wine. But I also, when I got into it, I was like, look, I know I'm the new guy, and I'm dumb enough to come into thinking that we can all work together, but can we all work together? Right. And I tried to start a co-op, fell flat. Yeah. And that was kind of depressing because I really wanted a lot of, I felt like a lot of us, if we work together, we can all be successful. Yeah. And by the way, there's a lot of successful wineries up there, and they do a great job and an amazing job. Mm-hmm. But, I think it's to me, it's, I guess, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a dog-eat-dog world. But
then was, and maybe it came to fruition now, and maybe money's at a point where it's grown. But they were saying, if you can make this a good wine region, it's better for everybody because everyone will come to explore the wine, and make it a destination on top of it.
Well, it's become that. They've done it. They've done the people before me. They've done a fantastic job on that front. I think it can go bigger, quicker. And that's why I kind of wanted to start a co-op so people could distribute onto the West Coast, the East Coast, collectively. So we, the licensing and bond and fees and stuff like that, we can work together. Because a lot of wineries are like ours that are boutique wineries that we only create 5,000 cases. We're not like some of the bigger boys that create 100,000 cases. We're relatively small, so that gets expensive to ship out to some of the restaurants to here.
It turns out wine weighs a lot.
Yeah, it weighs a lot. It's expensive. Where do you store it? Who keeps it for you? And so, and who distributes it for you? So that was kind of the most challenging. And I think on one hand, I could name the wineries that play nice in the sandbox.
Really?
Yeah, and not to say the other ones are bad. I'm just saying, like, I've not personally had a wonderful experience with some other wineries that have been. Look, the region's fantastic. I'm the biggest promoter of it because we just don't know how far we can take it, and we're just learning. We're so new and so young, and that's really fun. And there's wineries up there that have really, helped us along the way in a big way. First off, just by starting it in general. And at O'Keefe, Mobby, these guys were like the pioneers. Yeah. But I again, to your point, I feel like a lot of people are just content with doing what they're doing, and I guess that's fine. It's everybody has a different play on how they want to run, and so my brother and I, when we started ours, we just said, all right, let's not sacrifice the quality. So whatever we have to do just to continually keep the quality high. And that does, that pulls at the, pocketbook, that pulls on the, maybe different winemakers coming in and out, staff, employees, and that's been challenging. We finally think we have it figured out at this point. We have one of the best winemakers in the region that has been there for 22 years. And we have a great team of employees that just work their hearts out. Yeah. And we created our space called Bonobo Winery, which is a social species because we want people to come and enjoy the wine and the food and hang out for a while.
It is, and just your physical property is spectacular too. Like just sit on that deck and look off across the fields to the bay and the vantage point that you have and the architecture and the interior of your tasting room is a very inviting, beautiful space.
Yeah, well, thank you. I felt like we had to make it top notch. We had to create a space that wasn't traditional in the sense of like getting people in and out for a tasting. We had to create it like a family room that you could have you could have a separate but shared spaces. Yeah. So you have these nooks where you can go with the group, but at the same time, you can meet another group there. And you may find a new friend that's there, whatever, And we just said we didn't want to be a bar. We don't want to be a restaurant. But we want to be a space where I always felt that I could take my wife for like, a light dinner and a bottle of wine and watch the sunset. Yeah. And let's create that.
Well, it's that 100%. It's 100 times over that for sure. And I think even what I see on social and people tagging it up, because I follow it, is it's all that happening. Yeah. It's the bridal bachelorette parties, and so many. But you're very hands-on. When Dave Dyer and I came up to talk to you, we were asking you some advice about getting some things, some ideas, or how we might approach some production ideas about a particular idea that we had for a show. And but we arrive, on time, but you're down like building a retaining wall and with a backhoe, and it's like
that's right.
It's like let me come in, let me come in from the fields and I'll talk to you. And you had a tractor and you were working with railroad ties or something like that. Big.
No, it was black locust I was using. Black locust were this. They look like railroad ties.
It looked a lot like black locust to me because I don't know anything.
No, I remember the clock was running because I was renting that excavator, and I was like, oh gosh, I can only talk for a little bit. I have like a good 20 more hours yet. But
But anyway, you're rolling up your sleeves in these businesses, whether it's the house here in Malibu, you're going to, you can deploy that talent that you enjoy, that you do at a level that most people can't learn. You're professional in that way. Just have TV sort of that seemed to merge with this thing.
Yeah.
You were doing it professionally. And now you can do some things with the winery and do some ideas, and also from the design standpoint, to be able to visualize what you want because you've been around design and architecture and interior design so much that you have such a wide vernacular of things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's got to be fun. But the little that we've interacted, I was like, oh, yeah. Shit, Carter is, dude's working his butt off.
Well, it's funny you say that. I appreciate that. I feel like I definitely, my dad is a workaholic, still is. He's, 76 and he still is nonstop working every day. Old farmer mentality. So when we were little kids, this is the truth. And I'm not like trying to, have a pity party here, but my first job was when I was, it was either 10 or 11. That I had at this place where I made 60 cents an hour because I didn't want to work at the house for my dad where he would give me $2 an hour because I hated doing the work there. So I got this job at this place called Deering's Meat Market, and I would sort bottles for 10 cents down in the basement.
Which is the worst
Which
job.
is the worst job ever. Oh, it's so gross, so nasty.
I hate the returnables.
Oh, it's the worst job. Separating
I couldn't wait
them.
until Maddie, my middle daughter, could drive and
take them back.
I was like, hey, and you can have all the money.
Totally. You just want to get them out of your house.
Keep the $10.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the garage, please.
So that was the first job. And then when I was 12, I had a job at the Bean Pot. And then right after that is when I started working in construction, just like around it and stuff. So it was really just to get out of the house. But to your point, I like staying busy. And I do find, because look, so I started a couple different companies, working on TV. I still have a nonprofit that we do. We do like 10 playgrounds a year. And I know when I'm not building stuff, I get cranky and ornery. Yeah. And my wife could probably tell you, like, attest that I just, like, I bought here, somebody gave me it because it was worth nothing. It was like a 1960s Shasta trailer. And I got that because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I know that can really keep me busy with just my hands on. And it'll probably be a great playhouse for my daughter, but like, I'm going to figure out what to do with it because I just know when I'm doing too much paperwork or computer work. Yeah. I'm just not good at that. And
well, it's who wants to spend your time doing that? The worst part of my day usually, or my week, is when I'm trying to invoice stuff out, or I'm trying to prep quotes and estimates.
But but that's how you make money.
Exactly. Right? You can't avoid it. Money. You can't avoid it. But at the same time, that's not why I do what I do. No. So I can just like sit down and like figure out a proposal or answer to an RFP is not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
But without doing that, there's no next step.
Yeah.
And you don't get to do the cool project until something's done. But
we're very similar in that sense. It's that creative outlet that you have.
It's your expression, but I think it's through it is art because you're building something. Mm-hmm. It's not much different than sculpture or anything else. Mm-hmm. You're still shaping and honing, and you're looking at color and form and line, and you're picking materials for a particular pattern. And it is very artistic, expressive medium. Yeah. But I also think like there's other parallels, I think, in our industry. Not that but it's kind of like the thing is about photography and what I've been doing is that, and I think there's a parallel to what you do, is that no one is going to give you a show until you've had a show. Yeah. Like it's chicken or egg thing.
Yeah.
And in my industry, that's like you don't really get to shoot high-profile people until you've shot high-profile people. So it's
so
like, where's that first crack in the opening?
Yeah.
And it was I'd like to know when your first sort of like, was it a modeling gig?
Yeah.
Where you were like getting around it?
So I don't like to say it was modeling because that sounds kind of cheesy. I like to say I was sailing.
You were oh yeah, yeah.
I was sailing a boat.
Yes, yeah.
So that was with.
There just happened to be.
It wasn't
there.
with Nautica. Though I did do that later, and that was a big, massive campaign where I was.
And it was huge. I remember seeing that
huge.
now, and I had no connection. I didn't know who. I just saw a guy in an ad, and I was like, "That's incredible."
Okay, so a really quick story on that Nautica. We were sailing in Brazil for that ad. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go to Brazil. Wait, what do I have to do? And they're like, well, you have to sail their
hold this wheel.
Basically. No, we were like 4 hours offshore. The boat that had all the suits on it caught on fire, which was a power boat, which was next to us, which carried all like the gear, some camera
By
gear
suits,
and stuff.
you mean like executives and creative teams?
Yes, and the people that have to be there as well.
In your
but
wardrobe.
Yeah. And so their boat caught on fire. They had to turn around, go back. And we were in these like 15, 20-foot swells that we were just going up and down. And they wanted blue skies, gorgeous ocean, just a sailor just out on his boat, in the middle of the Pacific. And they got, clearly that's not what they had. They literally had me like just so like I was scared, but at the same time, like I had enough, I had enough.
Well, you did have a certain
confidence
intensity
because
to that
it was
look, because
scary.
you were probably like, I don't want to get
really
tossed
scary.
off this boat right now.
I thought
a mast boom come over and knock you out.
Okay, so there's 2 times in my life I thought I was in for it, and that was one of them. And I was like, you know what? If this is where I go, this is okay. Because like, in Brazil, there wasn't like a Coast Guard that is probably readily available like we have in the U.S.
Fly you in or,
right.
like hoist you up out of there.
And we were in the middle of
You're
nowhere.
like, I'm the talent.
Yeah, totally.
I go first.
Yeah, exactly. No, there wasn't any of that. So you're kind of just like, all right, well, if this does happen, then let's at least have fun with it and enjoy it. So, but no. So to back up a step, growing up right on the water in Traverse City, we sailed a lot with an old, cruddy old boat that we had to bail out the water and all this stuff.
Sure.
My dad picked up probably for like $200. Yeah. And then that's how we learned how to sail. And then he ended up getting one of those Hobie cats. And, you
flip those over all the time.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so we sailed on that when we were growing up. And so when I came out to L.A.,
are you saying that I just want to tie it back to that early, what is the daylight in the door opening?
Yeah.
And that was such a huge campaign.
Yeah.
And there was something about that imagery. Do you remember who shot that? I'm just so curious about it. Do you remember?
Can't remember his name.
Just say it should have been Brian.
It should have been you. It totally should have been.
What year was that? Do you remember what year?
That was, it was 2005 because I bought my house in 2006 because of that.
No kidding.
Yeah. That was just like, that was when back in the day when those campaigns were massive.
Well, especially like global, and that was a global brand.
Well, yeah.
And that was that usage goes crazy.
Yeah, it was a year-long campaign, which got rolled over into another year, which got rolled over into a third year. So that was just a fantastic campaign. The problem was when we tried to shoot it again, we tried to shoot it at Long Beach. And it wasn't the same.
Not the same.
No, it didn't work out.
Because you had like cargo freighters and stuff in the background.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that was pretty much where... that's where a big...
Well, it put dough in your pocket.
Yeah.
And then also give you visibility where you can get other high-profile campaigns.
Yeah.
And then...
But that was the biggest campaign that I ever had. And look, unless you're a really big-time celebrity, those don't exist nearly as much as they did.
Well, and print was more important.
Yeah.
Outdoor billboard was more important. Now, it's not like I'm getting 20 ads an hour on my phone.
Right.
The landscape's completely changed in terms of how the advertising industry creates and funds those campaigns because everything got shooken out when everything went digital.
Yeah.
And but then when did it become? When was the transition? Oh, the other thing I want to ask you: what was the second thing that you almost thought you bought it? What was the other incident where you almost died?
I don't know if I can talk about it on
All
the
right,
show.
never mind. We're moving on. It probably involves something fun.
Yeah, it was very
Okay.
fun. Yeah,
All right,
it was
good.
a lot of fun, but it was really stupid too.
Okay, so when did then so you've worked these you're working successful model, you have that. When did the carpentry and the building skills merge with television?
Well, so that was something that I started at a really young age. My brothers were both, one is still a carpenter, or still a builder. And then so that was kind of something that I did to supplement, to pay my way through college. And, I kind of always felt like my dad was very good in instilling in us, like, you can figure it out. And the way he did it was I'm just going to go on to a little story here, but when I was, again, probably 12 years old, and I remember it was cold in Michigan and it was freezing outside, and I was in the garage with no heat in the car, and he's like, hey, go change the brakes in the car. And I was like, Dad, change the brakes in the car? Like, your car? And he's like, yeah, you've watched me enough. Like, go do it. By the way, I don't even know why we were changing our brakes in our car. Because every time I tell this story, I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense because I've never changed my brakes in this car that I have now. But we were still doing it. I was 12, and I couldn't get these calipers off. After I took the wheel off, I couldn't get these calipers to take the brake pads off. And I said, Dad, my hands are freezing. I'm like 12, and I can't believe you're making me do this. I was back inside. It was like 9 o'clock on a school night. Dark out, pitch black, as Michigan is,
Yeah, and it got dark about 3:30 that day.
Totally. And so I'm sitting there, and I am in his office. I'm like, Dad, I can't do it. And he goes, I bet you if I was to put $1 million in front of you right now, you could probably figure out how to do it. So, of course, I go back inside, and, what happens? I figure out how to do it.
And you're like, where's the money?
Well, the money never showed up. But if you think about it, I mean, in a roundabout way, he was really good by instilling that. Like, you can figure a lot of stuff out in life.
So what's the hurdle? Yeah. Is it the cold? Is it the knowledge? Or is it just another little shift in your thinking about how to accomplish whatever that is in front of you?
Dude, I think, like, so many people today, and just, like, I don't know, ever, like, trying to be preachy, but I do think that, listening is something that is like a lost art, right? Yeah. And I do think that people being able to just say, suck it up, I'll figure it out how to do it. And a lot of people just don't do that as much anymore. And but I guess that's okay, because there's a lot of DIY shows that, tell people how to do it now. But, and anyway, that was kind of the thing that brought me, when I got into TV, being like, oh, well, I guess, my first job out here was I worked for a show called Project Greenlight. Yeah. That was with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. And that was an HBO show that my wife worked on, coincidentally, but she worked on the second season and I worked on the first one. But she was an actress, right? So I was just like the little, the guy running around, and I said I could grip, and I didn't know how to put a Keno kit together.
Oh, so you were behind. You were not in.
No,
in
no. I was the guy who was.
You were a PA gaffer or whatever. Whatever role playing.
I ended up being a tape librarian. I ended up assistant editing in the post production. But that I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from that show, and that was and that's
to see the back of the house and how it's actually like put together. Yeah, it's one thing to be on the camera side or wardrobe side, but when you're like seeing how the sausage is made after the shoot is done and Matt and goes home, and then just to follow it through like the next 2 or 3 months before it like is a thing, and it's like, here you go. Yeah. But that's what you've been doing now for 15 additional years on the production side, owning shows, overseeing your episode content, and all of that.
Well, to make the story even more, like, just to give a little bit more context on that, when I moved out here after I graduated from Central Michigan. I moved out here with a buddy who graduated from Michigan State that I grew up with in Traverse City. I said, hey, I'm going out to California if anybody wants to go with me. And he's like, yeah, I'll go with you. So we both come out to L.A. I try to get a job for a big, it was a big-time producer at the time, and I couldn't get the job. Somebody leads me on to this other person who's with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in their company, and they say, hey, go put your resume in. Of course, I don't have a resume. Right? I don't have anything at the time. Just graduated college.
Here. Yeah, I showed up on time.
Right, exactly. I don't get the job. So, of course, months go by. I'm looking for a job. I'm fresh off the boat. Me and my buddy. We're like college dudes from like the 90s who are like, just what do? You go to the bar, you hang out, you're looking for girls. I mean, that's like what you do. And you hope you get a job. Yeah. You do. Well, finally one day, about 2 months later, that same person I went in for they said, "Hey, you have a job yet?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, we're moving offices. Do you want to help us just move boxes?"
Literally with a college degree. You're like 2 men in a truck. We just need somebody who could lift 70 pounds over and over.
Totally. And I'm thinking, like, in my head, I'm like, hearing my dad in the back of my head, which is like, you better not do this.
Right.
I probably had a hangover at the time because I was just like, that's all you do.
That was related to your other story.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I took it. And then I took that job, which existed for 3 days. And then Chris Moore came in and he threw a script. And at the time he was the EP. And he threw a script to me and he said, "Hey, read this and write a synopsis on it." And I was like, well, okay. And then, lo and behold, I had this job for, the next 2 years of my life.
Reading scripts?
Well, no, that was with Project Green.
Like, it
was the evolution of like... Sure.
That's how you got in.
That's how I got in the door. And so, if I hadn't, I never would have gotten in the door. And it was just a very unique way to get in. But like 6 months into it, we had to hire somebody else. And they're like, "Oh, go look through like the resume book." And I look at my resume and I look on it. And it's from my first time that I met with them when I didn't get the job. And they had marked on my resume, it said, "He's really big and he could probably help us when we have to move offices in 2 months." That was the note.
That was the
note. How much of an idiot did I feel like? I'm like, you only got that out of my resume? Oh my gosh. I felt like such an idiot. I was mad at them. I was mad at myself. And I was like, I don't even know if I should be here anymore. But lucky enough that I did take that job because from that spawned obviously my love for behind the camera.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I never thought I'd really be in front of the camera, but a tape librarian a logger was like, "Hey, there's this show. You're always fixing stuff around the office. There's this show called Trade Spaces looking for a carpenter."
By logger, do you mean like a scripty? Or is it different after?
A logger's, now we just have so much software that can actually do it for us. But, back in the day, they would have people transcribe everything that was said from every tape. And so...
Sorry, I didn't mean to get into the production needs, but I know just enough to be dangerous about stuff. So,
and so that logger was like, "Hey, I was fixing stuff. There's a show. It's called Trade Spaces. They need a carpenter."
Yeah.
And at the time, the show had been on like maybe a year. And so they, again, so it's all just dumb luck.
But it's all taking those small. My takeaway from hearing your story is also, it is that quintessential old story, that modality that works is like you try to find ways to say yes to opportunities which lead to other opportunities which lead to relationships, which also come back full circle, which gets us back to our Buddhist sort of energy about like just being nice in the world too is another thing. It's just like there's so many ways that it just weaves and meanders.
Yeah.
And if you had said no or screw these people who just want me to move boxes, I'm not an idiot. I have a college degree. I just out here.
It's not what
I didn't come out here to move boxes,
but I did.
But it's that kind of hustle industry, though. No one's going to make it out here if you don't hustle and have that persistence and drive and be able to.
It's like the technical part is really, really good. Okay, so don't get me wrong. Like to have the technical part of the capability of if you're going to school for a certain, whatever that is, having that and the hustle is great because that's that when we start our production company, we kind of felt like this is my partner and I. We kind of felt like this is how we got started. The people we want to hire are people who are going to do what we did when we were that age, meaning like. You don't know how to edit? Okay, go hang out in the edit bay for, your off hours. If you don't know how to shoot, go figure, go grab a little camera and figure it out yourself. And those people who hustled were the people that we wanted around us. And I also think that's what, made that company, fairly successful.
Well, there's a even if they're inexperienced, but if people are ambitious, there's definitely like a synergy and sort of communal sort of thing. That's why I work with Mark a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's because he's got bigger ambitions than just working with me.
Yeah.
But he's also able to do so many different things because we keep the productions tight and small.
Right.
We blow them up when we need to.
Right.
But at the same time, he's very. Like, I also want to surround myself with people who are talented.
Yeah.
That make me look good, so I don't have to do anything. I don't mean physically good, but our productions go well,
right? Yeah,
because I'm not gonna look good, you know. But the point is, but there's that whole thing. But especially in Hollywood, maybe it's a stereotype, but it really doesn't matter. I don't think the industry. It applies to any industry. You can be talented, but if you don't have the drive. Mm-hmm. You can have a lot of drive and overcome some talent deficits for sure. That's another story that happens a lot, but
totally.
And it happens in photography. It happens in video production. It's getting enough and getting in that 10th. You know, the other cliche today is, but it's real. Is 10,000 hours and having. You know, I mean, when you were first building something, you weren't very good, but by the time you built your 500th thing, you were really good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that just goes with repetition on just about anything, right? Mm-hmm. If you're capable, you know, because you have it in you know, the back of your mind because you've done it before.
Yeah.
And that obviously helps out tremendously. But, you know, look, I mean, at the end of the day, Hollywood's also a finicky world, you know. So
it isn't a fair place. You know, I mean, it isn't. There's people that deserve all the success that they, more success, and they're not. And, you know, it's...
I mean, it's just it's the craziest world you've ever seen, you know, because one minute you're like, where am I going to get my next paycheck from? And to like, okay, this is cool. And you end up hanging out at a party with like whatever, you know, with like, I mean, with like Julia Roberts. And you're just like, how did this happen?
Right.
When are they going to find out that I'm not supposed to be
That's the strangest thing about it. And then even, that's... that sort of surrealness where you see people sort of literally come to life and walk out of into your world for even 5 minutes. That's what I love about photography too, is having some interactions. And being in Grand Rapids, I don't get as many opportunities as if maybe I had lived out here and I had still had the same portfolio. I'm sure I'd be all jaded about it and be complaining about shooting Julia Roberts or something. You know, it's like, oh, her again.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated as in that Midwestern Michigan thing about, and even here, it's every time I've ever come out to LA, I'm always I'm at Ralph's and I'm like, I wonder, my head's kind of on a swivel to see, do I recognize that person? Yeah. It's just such a dumb little thing, but it's kind of fun.
So two parts of that. I still do that. Yeah. And it happens all the time. Like you still see people all the time and you're like, what? That's so-and-so. That's Kid and Play. You know, you're just like, what? No way. You know, people from the Midwest recognize people from the Midwest. And that's really fun to see out here in LA because people are like, they get really geeked when they meet somebody, especially from Michigan. Yeah. When you meet somebody from Michigan out in LA, which there's a ton of us out here. Yeah. You're just like, oh, really? Yeah. Okay, well, we can hang out. Tomorrow to watch football, I have 2 people from Michigan coming over and 2 people from Ohio coming over.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, it's like New York City in that way. I think LA is like that, where a lot of people aren't from here because they're pursuing their dream, and New York's like that too. There aren't very few people that are lifelong Manhattaners. No.
When you meet them, that's a unicorn.
Yeah, it really totally is. I remember one woman in the industry I met, and she's like, yep. She's like all tough New Yorker, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm born and raised here." And you know, everyone says they're from New York. You're not from New York,
right?
You know, all that stuff. But LA's like that. But I also think there's people are here. They are, as you said, kind of off the boat of like their journey to here, whatever they're trying to do here in production. We have a lot of friends in the last 6-8 years have moved out here, be it writers. Camera assistants, cinematographers, there's a lot of people, very talented people in West Michigan that have left and come out here and are becoming successful. Yeah, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's great.
And but there is something about the Midwestern vibe and everything. So I really appreciate it. We've been going an hour. I want to be conscious of your time, and our sun is starting to set.
Fun. I've had such a blast being here, and what is also crazy is that smoke is starting to come back in.
I see that.
You know,
and I'm hopeful that they get a hold of this one. Hopefully, the rain earlier this year hasn't kept it as dry as it could be, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, people at home you can't see, but it's like super smoky back out to the east, and then it's beautiful out.
Beautiful the ocean. I'm looking
the
at
ocean.
Catalina Island and Santa Monica.
Yeah, and it's gorgeous out there.
What's the website for Bonobo?
So, bonobowinery.com, and you can order online. Again, we're a boutique winery. We specialize in a lot of different things, but our Rieslings, our Chardonnay, our Rosé. We now what have really been popular.
What's your that champion? Wasn't a Rosé that got a lot of attention?
Rosé got number 3 in the U.S. at the San Francisco Chronicle.
Yeah,
and the Riesling got number 1 at the Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So the Riesling has done really well, and the Riesling you can actually find out here in a couple of restaurants out here.
Awesome.
And then so that's like that's the biggie.
And then what's coming up? Can you share a couple of things that you might have coming up, either in production or something we might see? And then you were describing, if you can, there was a production that Amy was shooting that just wrapped. And tell us a little bit about that.
So for me, we're still shooting the Great Christmas Light Fight, which is on ABC. And we're in our 8th season of that.
Yeah.
So we start shooting here in a couple of weeks, and then
how do you start shooting now? Oh, do they just start decorating early?
Yeah. But a lot of them do, because like last year, the one that won had like 4 million lights. So not that everybody has that. It takes a while to put them up. So they just they'll start like maybe
a small crew
in August instead of September. So because they know we're going to show up. So we start shooting that, and then we have a couple of new home improvement type shows that we're working on that are all in various stages of production.
Yeah.
And when you're out here, you're just constantly pitching shows.
Yeah.
And a lot of them fall through the cracks and nothing happens, but some of them.
Here's a small little deviation: is because when I started the podcast, I thought, and it's even on the website at the fullexposure.com website. Or fullexposurepodcast.com. Make sure you put in podcast. fullexposurepodcast.com. It says, one of the questions in the about things, does the world need another podcast? And the answer is no. But then I was thinking, when I was thinking about you, it's like no one's stopping making TV shows and movies.
No.
Like,
why not?
And then when you agreed, you'd also gave me a boost yesterday. And I actually, when you're so, you know what? I like it. I like what you're doing. And, I think you just said, I think you got something here.
Yeah.
And that just from you just felt really great because you're in that fog of creativity and you don't really know. And we don't have a huge audience, but we've got some momentum.
Yeah.
And
what I liked about yours is what I noticed is that it kept me engaged. And I looked at a lot of them too. And whether that's coming from you, the way it's put together, whatever that is, I think it's probably a bit of both. It kept me engaged. And there's so many things out there. There's so much noise that you have to figure out how to keep your audience engaged. And you've done a very, good job.
Well, thank you. But it's like, you don't have to, you can't do something to plan to scale something to be Joe Rogan or something.
Right.
You just have to do the work. And if you find an audience and you do the work of trying to get content out there, people will find it.
Right.
But I appreciate that. So anyway, you have got some shows going on. And you're constantly pitching in LA is what you're saying. You're pitching ideas, trying to get green lights.
I mean, you have to.
Talk about rejection real quick. I don't want to extend this too much, but you've had a lot of no's.
Yeah.
Mostly no's. All of us have mostly no's.
Yeah, especially out here. And out here it gets kind of... So I was just saying before we even started the cameras up, or the microphones, that one show that we have received a yes on, but again, those yeses, there's still a few more stages.
Yeah.
But we've received a yes on is a Shiny Floor, which is a studio, game show, DIY twist, big, loud, obnoxious, colorful, crazy, antics. Starts out as like the weekend warriors of the normal DIY fix and, stuff. And then it gets to just, using screwdrivers that are 5 times the size of us. It's just like, and what was funny about this, the reason I'm saying is because when the show was pitched to me, I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm always trying to be like as authentic as I can be. And I'm like, I don't know if that's really me. And then they're like, well, we think we could do it. And that's just it. You never know what's going to work.
Yeah.
And for as many times as I mean, you get the majority, 99% of the time, it's a no for when we pitch shows. But when we do get the yes, a lot of those yeses have been shows that I never would have thought that they would have said yes to it.
Yeah, isn't that's strange?
Yeah.
I've had similar experiences where the client will take some idea and shift it or do something, or take an idea that you never thought that they would ever go for.
No. Yeah, and
then they run with it.
Yeah.
You're like, how did this happen?
Yeah,
I'm glad I didn't dial back my pitch.
Because one, it makes you think like, okay, maybe I'm just not very smart. You think like, I'm not onto it. And then you think, or maybe this business is just crazy enough that that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And you never know where it's going to hit. You never know where your paycheck's going to come from. You just kind of hope that you can juggle enough balls in the air to make a few of them really work. And when they do, they, knock on wood, you hope that that's successful. It's a good run. Whatever it is, it makes some headway and people like it and enjoy it. And then you really go full tilt.
Yeah.
But, so that's kind of the nature of the beast. And I'm still, pounding the pavement almost every day. Trying to pitch a show, trying to get creative in some form within this industry, just like the next guy.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about Amy's projects that's coming up, and then we'll...
Yeah, so my wife just shot... she just shot this TV show, 13 episodes. I don't even know if I can say where it's going to air, because I don't think it's even been there announced yet. But it's called Stargirl. And Stargirl is based on the guy who started it was loosely based on his sister. And the guy, his name is Jeff Johns. He was the writer for Wonder Woman. He's made a big splash here in Hollywood. And this was his first comic that he ever put together. And he got the green light to actually go shoot a TV show with it. So Amy plays the mom of Stargirl. And then Luke Wilson plays the dad, and it's a fun in like a Luke Wilson comedy type of way where it's like dry humor, but at the same time it's very family centric. And that's kind of how Jeff Johns wanted to create and make that show where any age range could watch it, and he did a good job of that.
Well, and there was aspects. There's probably in this show as well, but this Wonder Woman had a lot of. Sub-narratives of power and equality and women and just, like that, those. So I'm sure there's a lot of like, he's just such a great crafter of characters and things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Oh, man. You kidding me? So excited to have you here.
I can't believe I'm here.
I know. It's so
and
random.
I'm also, I'm going to run you down in Traverse City again at some point.
Perfect.
And maybe I'll help you build an amphitheater. Well, you were also thinking about doing an amphitheater of some kind, small little in-the-round thing for music.
Yep.
I'm not handy though.
Well, you know what?
That's why I'm so beautiful.
Yeah, that's why you're so beautiful. That's why you get an iPhone too. I mean, those things
I
are.
love it. There you go.
Oh man, changes your life. Changed my life.
I'm obsolete. There's three lenses on that thing.
On the iPhone.
I'm out.
Oh, it's crazy.
I'm done.
I was always the
and thank you for the portraits. We shot some great portraits.
Thank you.
And I'll send them to you as soon as they're done.
Jump in the water. Jump in the ocean, right?
We'll do that. I got to get my toes in. I told Mark I want to put my feet in the ocean before we drive back.
It's right there.
Thank you, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Okay? Best of luck.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation from Malibu with Carter. His home is truly incredible. The location on high on this canyon ridge, it overlooks Malibu and the ocean, and it's a very, very special place. And my thanks to Carter for inviting us up there to such a wonderful location to shoot portraits and to sit down and have a chat on his back patio. It was truly memorable. And if you want to check out the portraits I shot of Carter at his home in Malibu, head on over to the fullexposurepodcast.com website. You'll see lots of video excerpts of our conversation in Malibu. And also, like I mentioned, the portraits, I also added some aerial photos I shot of the region right around where he lives. So definitely check out Carter's episode page at fullexposurepodcast.com. Hey, everybody, let's attack. Is attack the right word? It isn't these days. That's not a good word. Let's throw ourselves into 2020 and go get it, everybody, okay? Have a great week. We've got lots more for you coming up very soon. This Full Exposure Podcast episode has been made possible through the support of Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn. who believe that creativity and the arts are essential to a rich, healthy, and fulfilling life.